Midnight Echoes.
This happened back in the winter of 2003, when I was 11 years old. We lived in a quiet suburb in Ohio, the kind of place where people didn't lock their doors during the day. It was a Tuesday, and I had woken up with a fever and a nasty cough, so my mom decided to let me stay home from school. Both my parents worked full-time. My mom was a nurse, and my dad worked in logistics. By 8:30 a.m., they were both gone. Before leaving, my mom gave me the standard lecture. Don't use the stove, don't answer the landline unless it's us, and absolutely, under no circumstances, do you open the front door for anyone. I nodded, happy to have a day of daytime TV and video games. For the first few hours, it was great. I felt that specific kind of illicit thrill you get as a kid when you have the whole house to yourself. It was quiet, too quiet, really. The only sounds were the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional car driving past outside on the slushy roads. Around 11 a.m., I was sitting on the couch watching The Price is Right, nursing a ginger ale. The sun was out, making the snow outside blindingly bright. It felt like the safest time of day. Then the doorbell rang. It made me jump, spilling a little ginger ale on my pajamas. My heart immediately did that double thumb thing. I knew the rules. I wasn't supposed to answer it. I sat perfectly still, muting the TV, hoping whoever it was would just go away. They rang again. Longer this time. Ding-dong. I crept off the couch and crawled along the carpet toward the hallway so my shadow wouldn't be visible through the front living room window. I reached the front door and pressed my eye to the peephole. The view through the fisheye lens was distorted, but I could see a man standing on our porch. He looked official. He was wearing a bright yellow high-visibility jacket with reflective stripes, work boots, and a hard hat tucked under his arm. He held a clipboard. He looked impatient. He turned and looked directly at the door, as if he knew I was there. He knocked this time, 3 sharp raps on the wood. Hello? Utility company. Need to check the meter. His voice was muffled through the heavy oak door. My 11-year-old brain started debating. My mom said never open the door. But he was from the utility company. If I didn't let him check the meter, would our power go out? Would my parents get in trouble? I know someone's home, the man called out. I can hear the TV. I had muted it, but maybe I hadn't been fast enough. I decided to compromise. I wouldn't open the door, but I would acknowledge him. I kept the deadbolt thrown and just cracked the heavy wooden door a couple of inches, leaving the security chain engaged. My parents aren't home, I said through the crack. My voice sounded embarrassingly high-pitched. The man smiled. It was a practiced, easy smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. He seemed too big for the porch. That's okay, buddy. I don't need to come in. The meter is around the side of the house, behind the gate. But the gate is locked. I just need you to pop outside and unlock it for me real quick. Takes 2 seconds. I hesitated. I'm not allowed outside. His smile faltered just a fraction. Look, kid. Your dad, David, he called us in. We've got a gas leak reported in the neighborhood. It's a safety issue. If you don't unlock that gate, I have to shut off gas to the whole block. You want your neighbors to freeze? He knew my dad's name. That tipped the scales. I felt a wave of guilt that I was obstructing important safety work. Okay, I said. Hold on. I closed the door, undid the chain, and unlocked the deadbolt. I stepped out onto the cold porch in just my socks and pajamas. The cold air hit my feverish skin like a slap. Thanks, buddy, the man said. He was standing between me and the front door now. I walked quickly around the side of the house to the wooden fence gate. It had a simple slide bolt on the inside. I reached over, unlatched it, and swung it open. "There," I said, turning back to the man. He wasn't looking at the meter.
He was looking at me.
And he wasn't smiling anymore. "You're homesick today, huh?" he said. His voice was deeper now, devoid of that friendly customer service lilt. "Yeah," I whispered, suddenly intensely aware of how small I was and how empty the street was. "Mom's a nurse, right? She works over at St. Mary's?" My blood ran cold. He knew too much. He wasn't looking at his clipboard. He was just staring at me, taking a step closer. He smelled like stale cigarettes and something metallic. "I need to go inside now," I said, trying to sound brave, and started to walk past him toward the front door. He sidestepped, blocking my path. He wasn't wearing a utility uniform under the High-Vis jacket, just a dirty gray hoodie. "Actually," he said, looking toward the now open back gate leading to our secluded backyard, "the issue is actually around the back of the house. Why don't you show me?" He reached out a hand to guide me, or grab me by the shoulder. At that exact moment, a loud diesel engine roared to life next door. My neighbor, Mr. Henderson, was backing his massive RV out of his driveway for a winter trip. The noise was deafening. Mr. Henderson saw us. He stopped the RV and rolled down his window, leaning out. "Everything all right over there, Jake?" he bellowed over the engine. The man in the High-Vis jacket froze. His hand dropped from near my shoulder. He looked at Mr. Henderson, then back at me, a look of pure, venomous hatred crossing his face. "Yeah, we're good," the man yelled back, but he was already backing away down the driveway. "Just finished up." He practically jogged to an old, beat-up sedan parked 3 houses down, not a utility truck, and peeled away. I ran inside, locked every lock, and hid in the bathtub until my parents came home. We called the utility company. No gas leak. No work order. No employee matching that description. I realized later that he must have stalked our family. He knew my dad's name, my mom's job. He knew when they left. He was just waiting for a day when one of them, or me, was home alone. The scariest part wasn't the confrontation. It was the realization of how easily I had been manipulated into walking right out of my safe house and into his trap. When I was 12, my family moved into an old Victorian farmhouse out in the country. It was beautiful during the day, but at night, it groaned and settled like a living thing. My parents were attending an overnight wedding in the city, leaving me alone for the first time in this new, giant, creaky house. They left around 6 p.m. By 7 p.m., the sky had turned a bruised purple color, and the wind was whipping the old oak trees against the siding. A massive summer thunderstorm was rolling in. I tried to distract myself. I made popcorn and put on a movie in the living room, turning the volume up loud to drown out the thunder. We had a golden retriever named Buster, and he was already pacing nervously, whining every time lightning flashed. The house layout was crucial. The living room was on the first floor. Right off the kitchen was a heavy wooden door that led down to the unfinished basement and the root cellar/crawlspace area. My dad had strictly forbidden me from going down there. It was dirt-floored, damp, and full of spiders. He kept the door locked with a hook and eye latch high up on the frame. Around 9 p.m., the storm was directly overhead. The power flickered twice, then died completely. The movie cut out, plunging the house into silence, followed instantly by a deafening crack of thunder that shook the floorboards. Buster went berserk, barking frantically at the darkness. I fumbled for the flashlight I had prepared and turned it on. The beam cut through the dusty air. "It's okay, Buster," I whispered, my voice shaking. Then I heard it. In the silence between thunderclaps, there was a distinct sound from the kitchen area. Thump. It sounded heavy and wet, like a sack of potatoes being dropped onto the linoleum floor. Buster stopped barking and let out a low, guttural growl, his hackles raised, staring toward the dark kitchen archway. I sat frozen on the couch, flashlight beam wavering. "Hello." Silence. Just the rain hammering against the windows. I convinced myself it was something falling off a shelf because of the thunder vibration. I slowly got up, Buster glued to my leg, and shone the light into the kitchen. Nothing was out of place. No fallen pots. No tipped-over chairs. But Buster walked straight to the basement door and sniffed the crack at the bottom. He let out a sharp bark, then backed away, whimpering. I shone my light at the door. The hook and eye latch high up on the frame was unhooked. The metal hook was dangling loose. My stomach dropped. My dad always kept that locked. Had I forgotten? Had the vibration shook it loose? I approached the door. I knew I shouldn't open it. Every horror movie instinct told me to run away. But I needed to know. I needed to lock it. I reached out and grabbed the doorknob. It was freezing cold. I turned it, and the door creaked open, revealing the pitch-black stairs leading down. The smell of damp earth and mildew rushed up to meet me. I shone my light down the stairs. There were wet footprints on the wooden steps. They were muddy, large boot prints, leading up from the basement darkness, right to the top step where I was standing. But they didn't lead away into the kitchen. They just stopped at the top step. As if someone had walked up, stood at the door listening to me in the living room, and then creak. The sound came from directly below me, deep in the dirt crawlspace part of the basement. It was the sound of the old furnace door being slowly opened. I didn't scream. I couldn't. I slammed the basement door shut, jammed the hook back into the eyelet, and dragged a heavy oak kitchen chair in front of it. I grabbed Buster by the collar and ran upstairs to my parents' bedroom, locking that door too. I hid in their closet with the dog, my cell phone clutched in my hand. Thank God I had one by then, and called 911. The dispatcher kept me on the line while the storm raged outside. Every few minutes, I swear I could hear heavy, slow footsteps moving around on the floor below us. Floorboards creaking rhythmically, pacing back and forth in the kitchen, right in front of the basement door. When the state troopers finally arrived 45 minutes later, their headlights washing over the front yard felt like salvation. They searched the house with guns drawn. The basement door was still locked with the chair in front of it. But when they went downstairs, they found the small egress window in the back of the crawlspace, a tiny window well meant for ventilation, had been shattered from the outside. Someone had crawled in during the storm, waited in the dark, and walked up the stairs. The police said they probably intended to rob the place, thinking it was empty because there were no cars in the driveway, and got spooked when the power went out and I turned on the flashlight. But I know what I heard. They didn't leave immediately. They stood at the top of those stairs, separated from me by one thin door, just breathing and listening. And when I ran upstairs, they didn't leave. They paced the kitchen. They weren't there for the TV. I was 13, an only child, and perhaps a little too imaginative for my own good. It was summer break, 2005. My parents were both at work, and I had the house to myself from 9 to 5 every weekday. I usually spent the time playing Halo 2 online or reading. Our house was a standard 2-story suburban build. My room was upstairs. This particular Wednesday started normally. I was downstairs around noon, making a sandwich in the kitchen. I left the loaf of bread on the counter, tied up the bag, and took my sandwich into the living room to watch TV. About 20 minutes later, I went back into the kitchen for a drink. The loaf of bread was sitting in the middle of the kitchen floor. The twist tie was off, and 3 slices of bread were laid out neatly in a row next to the bag on the linoleum. I stared at it. I was the only one home.
We didn't have pets at the time.
I laughed nervously. Okay, very funny, Ghost, I mumbled. I assumed maybe the bag had rolled off the counter, and the impact had somehow laid out 3 slices? It made no sense, but my brain refused to accept any other alternative. I cleaned it up and went back upstairs to my room to play Xbox. I put on my headset and got lost in a match. About an hour passed. I took my headset off to go to the bathroom. My bedroom door, which I always kept closed while gaming, was wide open. And sitting in the middle of the hallway rug, directly outside my door, was my old teddy bear, Mr. Jenkins. I hadn't seen that bear in years. It was supposed to be in a storage bin in the guest room closet down the hall. My skin started to prickle. This wasn't bread falling off a counter. Someone had gone into the closet, dug through a bin, found the bear, and placed it outside my door while I was 10 feet away with noise-canceling headphones on. I walked out into the hallway. It was dead silent. The afternoon sun was streaming through the windows, dust motes dancing in the light. Everything looked normal, sunny, and safe, which made the bear sitting there even more terrifying. "Hello," I called out. "Mom? Dad? Did you guys come home early?" Silence. I checked the driveway from the guest room window. No cars. I started doing a perimeter check of the upstairs. Guest room, clear. Bathroom, clear. My parents' room, clear. I went downstairs, moving slowly, holding a heavy hardcover book as a weapon. The living room was empty. The kitchen was empty. Then I saw the dining room table. My mom had a collection of those porcelain dolls. They were creepy, but I was used to them. They sat on a hutch in the dining room. All 6 of the dolls were now sitting around the dining room table. They were arranged in chairs, facing each other, like they were having a tea party. In the center of the table was a kitchen knife, sticking straight up, stabbed into the wood of the table. I almost threw up. The level of deliberate, quiet insanity it took to do that. I wasn't dealing with a ghost. I knew that now. Ghosts don't stab tables with kitchen knives. I realized whoever was doing this was playing a game with me. They were moving things around while I wasn't looking, escalating the weirdness, enjoying my confusion, which meant they were watching me right now. Where could they be? I had checked every room, except the attic. The access hatch to the attic was in the ceiling of the upstairs hallway, right above where the teddy bear had been placed. It was just a piece of drywall you pushed up. I stood in the hallway, looking up at that square in the ceiling. A cold draft seemed to be coming from around the edges of it. As I stared, I saw it move, just a fraction of an inch. The panel lifted slightly, then settled back down silently. Someone was up there, lying on their stomach, peering down through the crack at me. I didn't scream. I walked very calmly into my bedroom, shut the door, and locked it. Then I grabbed my cell phone, climbed out my bedroom window onto the roof of the porch, jumped down to the front lawn, and ran to my neighbor's house. Police found the attic hatch open when they arrived. In the attic, they found a sleeping bag rolled out near the hatch, empty food wrappers, and a notebook filled with ramblings. They never caught the person. The police figure it was a drifter who had gotten in through a loose gable vent days prior and had been living up there, coming down when my parents left for work to eat our food and play with my toys. The thought of him perfectly arranging those slices of bread, giggling to himself while I watch TV in the next room, is enough to make me never want to be alone in a house again. This happened back in 1999. I was 14. My family had just moved into a massive, sprawling ranch-style house that had been built in the 70s. It was a foreclosure, and we got it cheap because the previous owner, an old man named Mr. Russo, had died in the house. He'd been a hoarder and a recluse, and it had taken months to clean the place out before we moved in. The house still had the original landline phone system. There were phones everywhere: kitchen, bedrooms, living room, and even one in the detached garage, which was connected to the house by a long, covered breezeway. It was a Friday night. My parents went out to dinner with the new neighbors, leaving me alone to unpack boxes in my room. Around 8 p.m., the phone rang. It was a loud, jarring, old-school mechanical ring that echoed through the empty hallways. I picked up the kitchen extension. Hello. Silence. But not dead silence. I could hear a faint crackle, like an open line, and very soft, wet breathing. Hello? Is anyone there?
Click.
They hung up. I figured it was a wrong number or a prank caller. I went back to unpacking. 20 minutes later, it rang again. Hello. I was annoyed this time. Again, just the breathing. It sounded congested. Heavy. Look, stop calling here. I snapped and slammed the phone down. 10 minutes later.
Ring.
I let the answering machine get it. It was one of those old tape deck machines. It clicked on, played my dad's greeting, and then beeped. Through the machine's speaker, I heard the breathing. Louder this time. Then a voice. It was raspy, weak, like someone talking with a mouthful of phlegm. Is Arthur there? Let me speak to Arthur. Arthur was Mr. Russo, the dead previous owner. My skin crawled. It was probably some old friend of his who didn't know he was dead. I picked up the phone to explain. Listen, Mr. Russo passed away months ago. We're the new owners. Please don't call again. Silence for a beat. Then the voice whispered with sudden, terrifying clarity. You're lying. He's in the garage. I can hear him.
Click.
I froze. The detached garage.
It was dark out there.
I tried to rationalize it. It was a sick prank. Someone in the neighborhood knew the house's history and was messing with a new kid. I went around and locked all the doors, double-checking the deadbolt on the door that led to the breezeway connecting to the garage. At 9 p.m., the phone started ringing again. But this time, it didn't stop. I picked it up and immediately hung up. It rang again instantly.
Up, down, up, down.
I finally just left it off the hook. The dial tone hummed angrily. Then, a different sound started. The intercom beep. The house phone system had an intercom feature. You could press a button on one phone and broadcast your voice through the speakers of all the other phones in the house.
Beep.
A burst of static tore through the quiet house, coming from the phone in the kitchen, the living room, and my bedroom simultaneously. Then the breathing, amplified, coming from every room. H-H-H-H-H-H. H-H-H-H-H-H. Who is this? I yelled at the kitchen phone, trying to figure out which button to press to talk back.
Beep.
The intercom clicked off. Then it clicked back on.
Beep.
Arthur? Are you hiding in the breezeway, Arthur? It's cold out here.
The voice was taunting now.
And it sounded closer. I realized with a jolt of adrenaline where the call had to be coming from. If they were using the house intercom, they had to be on one of the house phones. I ran to the kitchen phone base. It had little red lights next to the labels for the different extensions. Line 1 was lit up red. That was the open line. Garage EXT was also lit up red. The call was coming from inside the detached garage. The person, the thing, with the raspy voice was sitting out there in the dark, in Mr. Russo's old workshop, holding the phone.
Beep.
Intercom on again. I'm coming in to find you, Arthur. Unlock the breezeway door. Then I heard it. The heavy, metal K-chunk of the garage door opening. Not the big car door, but the regular door that led into the covered breezeway. Footsteps. Slow, shuffling footsteps on the concrete path of the breezeway, heading toward the house door that I had just locked. The doorknob to the breezeway jiggled violently, then pounding. Heavy, rhythmic pounding on the wood. Thump, thump, thump. Let me in, Arthur. It's time to go. The voice screamed over the intercom speakers, echoing through the whole house. I retreated to the furthest point of the house, my parents' master bathroom. I locked the door and curled up in the shower, covering my ears, waiting for the sound of breaking glass. The pounding continued for what felt like hours, accompanied by that horrible, raspy screaming over the intercom. Then, abruptly, it all stopped. The pounding ceased. The intercom clicked off. Silence returned to the house. My parents came home 10 minutes later. They found me catatonic in the shower. When the police searched the garage, they found the phone off the hook, dangling by its cord. The door from the garage to the breezeway was wide open. But the strangest thing was what they found on the dusty workbench right next to the garage phone. There were outlines in the dust where tools had sat for years. And written in the thick dust, with a trembling finger, were the words, "Help me, Arthur, he won't leave." The handwriting matched samples of Mr. Russo's writing they found in old documents. The police think a squatter had been living in the garage, someone mentally unwell who knew Mr. Russo. But I know the truth. I heard that voice. It didn't sound human. It sounded like decay. We moved out 6 months later. The house is still empty.